And here you can get her up.
She's going to follow me where I go. My pleasure. Thank you. Sure is. Yeah, I know that.
Yeah, not where we're at.
Are we plugged in? I guess so. I was just testing. I'll give it a few more minutes.
I think you got out of it because you talked too much.
No.
I hope so too. And I think that absolutely November, he's going to hear it loud and strong. Anyway, Danny Tarkanian is here. He's going to tell you about his plan for Nevada, for the nation.
Thank you. Hey, thank you very much, Cindy. If Harry Green has not heard what you want him to hear, there's a videotape for him right there that goes back to him and his staff. Let him know. All right. Every time I come up into Hawthorne, I have a great crowd, a great audience. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to come out here tonight on a Thursday night. Cindy and her husband Mark have done a great job every time of organizing events. And many of you have already been here before when I've spoken. Thank you for coming back, and for you that are new here, thank you for coming and giving me the opportunity to listen to me. Now, you know, as most of you feel right now, the frustration and anger that's going on throughout the country with the direction our leadership has taken us. We're living through some very, very dangerous times. What American, it doesn't matter whether you're Democrat, Republican, or Independent, what American isn't concerned where we have a federal government that takes $1 trillion and decides which companies they want to save and which companies they don't want to save? You know, we think Merrill Lynch is worth saving, Lehman Brothers are not. How about then they go from the financial industry to the insurance industry, and you know, AIG's too big to fail, we better save them. And then all of a sudden they say, now we got done with the financial and insurance industries, we believe the auto industry is too big to fail, we don't want them to fail. Well, you know, we got some tough times here in Nevada. Our gaming is at the worst level ever, our construction has been decimated. You know, they need to be saved. But you know, our Senate Majority Leader felt the auto industry was more important. You know, we walk a slippery slope where we allow the federal government to dictate which companies they want to save and which companies they don't, which industries they feel is worth savings and which industries they don't. And not only are we walking a slippery slope when we do that, you allow the special interest groups, the money people who could really influence those legislators, to get our taxpayer dollars to subsidize their failures. And look at the situation we're at right now. We have a deficit that today was just passed. They're going to raise the debt ceiling to $14.8 trillion. $14.8 trillion. The deficit for this year alone is supposed to be $1.4 trillion. In a very short period of time, 50 cents for every dollar you pay in taxes is going to go to pay the interest alone on our federal debt. Nothing to benefit our country, just the interest alone on our federal debt. And the sad fact is, the people in office right now just don't seem to get it. If you heard Obama's speech last night, he basically told us how he saved us from a world catastrophe, a financial meltdown. He doesn't explain that we have a worse unemployment rate now than we had before. He doesn't tell the people of Nevada that you have the highest unemployment rate in the state's history, the most foreclosures in the country, the most bankruptcies in the country. And you know, on top of that, we just spent $800-some billion to stimulate our economy, to create, what was it, 67 jobs that have been created outside the government sector. You know, we have to make a change in Washington. I got into this race because I believe I can go back to, I will go back to Washington, D.C., and I'll represent the people of Nevada first our nation first, do what's right, and I'm not going to be influenced by special interest groups, the power people, the money people. I don't have this ego or the desire that I'm going to sell our state short so that I can move up the party leadership ladder and be more powerful. I want to go back to Washington, D.C. I want to be the best representative this state has ever had and do what's best for the people here in the state. Well, thank you. You got to take those mitts off so we can hear those claps. My background is this. I grew up in Nevada. I raised my family here in Nevada. My wife Amy is in the back, holding little Jerry, our newest member of our family. And my 3 little girls are here, Lois, Ava, and Ashley. And I started, now operate 2 small businesses here. One is a commercial real estate company, which is struggling just like so many others. Another is a nonprofit group, a basketball academy that we try to work with underprivileged children here. And I understand the problems small businesses are facing and trying to survive. Just a few minutes ago, I was walking down the street talking to some owners, and we stopped and talked to a shop owner, and he told me he's been in business 4 years here. And actually, what's really ironic is when I was walking by him originally, he was talking to a customer who said, I sure hope you don't close your doors. I love your prices. You do such a great job. And she was praising him. But when I came back and I introduced myself to him, he said, you know, what can you do for me? I've been trying to get a loan. If I could get a $17,000 loan, I could survive for 3 more years and get through this crisis. We just gave $1 trillion to all these banks because they failed in their business, and we can't get a small business person $17,000. Someone who's been in business and has a record, so we can help that person through this crisis that we're facing here. There's something wrong with the policies that our legislators are passing when we just ignore people like that and we could bail out these multi-billion-dollar industries that pay their CEOs hundreds of millions of dollars in bonuses. Just before that, I was at the gas station up here, and I talked to a gentleman who has a mining claim and can start mining, and he says he is on a waiting list with the BLM to get a permit. They told him, despite the fact that he has a purchaser for his ore, and half of it he said is on the surface, he said he's been trying to get a permit, and the BLM told him it'll take at least 1 year before he'll get his first permit, and 7 years before he'll ever get up and go in full time. I said, well, how many jobs would be created? I mean, how many people would you have to hire to work that? And he estimated 300 jobs. You know, this is the kind of things we're facing in a country that are common sense principle problems that can be resolved by just lessening these burdens and regulations we're posing on businesses to survive. And instead, we want to create more government intervention into our lives. I'm going to close with this, and I'm going to take some questions. There's a completely different philosophy from what Senator Reid believes in and from what I believe in. Senator Reid believes that with all these problems that are happening in society, the best answer is for government to get involved and make the decisions for you and to use your taxpayer dollars to pay for them, and somehow the government will get you out of these problems. And I believe that I have the confidence in you as people that you should have the right to make the choices that you think are best, that can get us out of these problems, and that the power should be put back into your hands. I don't believe we should have spent $800 billion to stimulate jobs here by creating more government programs when we should have lessened the burdens, the tax burdens, the regulation burdens, and so forth of small businesses, because you as small business people will create jobs that will be longer lasting, more sustainable, and more profit at the end. There's a complete different philosophy between what he believes in and what I believe in, and the people here in this state, here in this city, and throughout the state are going to make a choice come November, whether they want to keep going the direction Reid has taken us or if they want to change. I hope that you'll continue to follow my campaign and support me. I'm in a primary June 8th for all of you that are registered as Republicans, or for any of you that want to switch over. We have voter registration forms. Andrew has them in the back. I encourage you to follow the primary. I hope that you'll support me. So far, I am winning the primary, but it's a very close race, and I can sure use all of your help and support. I would also like to say that since I got in the race in August, there's been 12 different polls that have come out between myself and Senator Reid. I'm beating him in every single poll outside the margin of error. I'm the only candidate that's done that. Thank you. And more important than that is, after Reid started his full-blown TV ads, whatever it is, 950,000 he spent in a month to tell the people of Nevada how great he is and what he's done to save our state, I've gone up higher and higher and higher in the polls against him. The last two polls have had me at 14 and 12%, the highest any candidate's ever been. We are on a roll. I ask you to help get behind us so we can steamroll Reed and send him back to Searchlight. Now, the purpose of this meeting was to get your, I want to hear what you guys have to say, your problems. I want to also hear what solutions you want, what you want your elected officials to do. Because if I get back and represent you, I will be a public servant. And as a public servant, it means I will serve you, the public. It isn't going back and being a politician so I can do what would make me the most powerful person. You are the people we serve, and I want to hear from you. If anybody has some questions, I'd sure love to get started. We're going to make this a very quick evening, and that's too long a drive for that. Yes?
I want to know if you will back term limits for Congress and the Senate.
I certainly would. That is an issue that has been raised. Ironically, the more there's the mistrust with our elected leaders, the more that issue is being raised. There are positives and negatives of term limits, okay? The positive term limits is this. You get elected leaders in office, and because of the way they can raise money and the power they have in their positions, it's hard to get them out of office. So the answer is, well, let's have a term limit for them. Now, you also have to understand that if you do have a term limit, you are going to have people leave those positions, and you're going to bring new people in with a higher turnover. And in the federal position, primarily, you have a lot of national defense and security issues, and you got to weigh that with the counterpart of wanting to have people that aren't lifetime senators and congressmen in office. What I will do is I will represent the people. If the people of Nevada are in favor of term limits, then I will represent their desires.
What did you think of that speech last
night? First of all, I got to be honest. I didn't hear the whole speech. I was driving back from Pahrump, and I only saw bits and pieces of it when I got home. But from what I gathered, Obama, again, he had some really great rhetoric, like he always does. He talked about how these programs he's done has really solved a lot of our problems here. I mean, did you hear his comment? We are out of the worst of the recession. You guys feel that way? Then he says, the top priority is jobs, and we're going to concentrate on jobs. Well, why wasn't that his top priority a year ago? I mean, we were hurting a year ago for jobs. Why wasn't that his top priority? Instead, he's been pushing through an agenda of more government intervention, to getting more government involved in all these different areas. Now, even with that, even with the fact he says now this is going to be our top priority jobs, he's a year late, what does he talk about? We're going to still push through health care. We're still going to have cap and trade. We're still going to have all these other things that will kill jobs, create more of a deficit for us. Lieberman was quoted recently as saying that in the next 10 years, the federal deficit is estimated to be $21 trillion. If I'm not mistaken, I read in the paper the other day that our gross domestic product is $14 trillion a year. We're at that deficit right now. Our deficit is equal to 1 full year of our gross domestic product, and once we get to 21 trillion, we're going to be 125% of that. How are we going to get out of that? How are we going to get out of this deficit? There's two ways. We can file bankruptcy, default on our notes, and have no standing in the world economy. Or two, we have to have high spread inflation that's going to devalue the dollar so that this dollar that you have now that you could buy $1 worth of goods is going to be worth about 40 cents. What's that going to do to all the seniors here that have worked their whole lives to have a set income that they felt, and they should have felt, they estimated this is what I need to live off of, and now they're living off of 40% of that. They don't seem to get it. I mean, the government just doesn't seem to get it. They think we're playing Monopoly. And we're not even talking about these mandates, these unfunded mandates that are coming up for Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security that we can't fund. Just to give you an idea, when they started Social Security, they said it was going to be a lockbox. We're going to take the money, we're going to save it, and I guess they were going to put in some T-bills, and they weren't going to spend it, so when everybody retired would have their money. Well, we had an administration in office that feels the same way this current one does. We need to spend more money, let's just spend it. So they started spending the Social Security dollars. Now they say, we're happy to spend all of it, and now we have more people retiring than are working. How are we going to pay for it? They got to cut Social Security, they got to raise the age, or they're not going to be able to pay for it. And what does that do to the hard-earned seniors who paid into the program and deserve it? The people in office right now just ignore it. I believe, and I really believe the sentiment around our country is we need to bring people, people that are going to represent the people back to office. Someone who's going to go back to office who's not a long-term partisan politician or a party insider, but someone who wants to work with the people, to represent the people and do what's best. And I will bring that to the table for you if you are so fortunate, if I am so fortunate to have you elect me. What's the next question? Before I start my monologue over again. Yes.
One of the things that Senator Reid has said is that he votes his conscience. Now, I've seen him voting his conscience on things that people don't support. I want two things from you, or from any candidate that I elect. And that is, A, they will follow the Constitution to the letter, and B, that they will vote the will of the people, not their conscience.
Okay, I'm supposed to repeat the question.
That's okay.
My comment was that Senator Reid has said that he votes his conscience, and I've seen him do this time and again, even though the polls here in Nevada have said that we were not in favor of one thing or another. That's what I want from the next person in office that I elect from Nevada, is that one, you will follow the Constitution to the letter, and two, you will listen to the will of the people. I could care less about your conscience.
That's a pretty good statement. First of all, I certainly am going to follow the Constitution of the United States. That's our mandate, and we should follow it. It's interesting that I had a meet and greet in Tonopah 2 or 3 hours ago, and we had a gentleman that got up, and he said that he talked with Senator Reid, I don't know how many years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, and he asked him about following the Constitution. And he's on our tape, and we got him on tape. It was incredible, because you wouldn't believe it unless you heard it. But he swears that Senator Reid told him, "What do you mean, that old piece of document that doesn't mean anything anymore?" And that was his response. Now, it's hard to believe Reid would make those comments, and I'm not there to know if he did or not. But what has he done recently? What he has done recently shows that he doesn't want to follow the Constitution, doesn't feel he needs to. There's nowhere in the Constitution does it say, well, you can take taxpayer dollars to pick and choose which companies you want to save or not save, private companies. Nowhere in the Constitution does it provide for the President of the United States the ability to fire the CEO of an auto industry. Nowhere in the Constitution does it allow our senators or all of our legislators to say, we're going to have a bill passed where 49 states, taxpayers in 49 states are going to pay for the Medicare for a 50th state because that senator wanted to play hardball with me. I mean, he doesn't follow the Constitution, he doesn't care. I certainly will do so, and I know and that leads to the second question, are you going to follow the will of the people? That is the will of the people. They want someone in office who's going to follow the Constitution, do what they want. And I will do that. I mean, I will do that. I think also, though, you need to find an elected leader that has the views that you have too. Because if they don't have those same views, they don't have those convictions, they're not going to be able to vote the way you want them to vote. And I will stand here today and I'll tell you, I doubt that you will agree with every single position I have. I hope that you agree with most of them. But I do know that I can promise you this, that when I go back to Washington, D.C., I will stand by the convictions that I have, the input I've had from my constituents, and do what I believe is right for the people of the state of Nevada, irrespective of special interest groups or party pressures. And that's a promise I can give you. Yes?
Whoever the Republican candidate is, you better be ready to take on what he finds in your background, whether fruitful or not. Are you ready to take that on, and is there any problem?
Yeah, that's a great question. The question was, whoever runs against Reid in the general election, you better be ready to take on what he's going to say, because he will come after and basically have a character assassination of you, whether what he says is true or not. And then the next question was, am I ready for it? And the final question was, are there any skeletons in my closet? Let me tell you a story, if you don't mind. It's going to take a few minutes, but I believe it's important, because then you're going to understand why I'm the best candidate for this office. 6 years ago, if you remember, every statewide candidate in Nevada decided not to run against Senator Reid. And I was asked, I just moved back to Las Vegas. I was coaching with my dad in Fresno. And they asked me to go back to the National Public and Senatorial Committee, brought me back to D.C. to look at running against Reid. When I got back into town, I was told, two mutual friends came up to me and said, Danny, you don't know what you just did. Harry Reid is so mad he's going to destroy you. He's going to absolutely destroy your character. Your political career is over. One of them said that Harry Reid's sons are so upset that they're going to claim you're involved in telemarketing fraud and they're going to destroy you. Now, I didn't think there was anything to it because all of that is a false and not true. And I said, how could they get away with that? Well, I ran for office twice before. Both times I was an underdog. Both times I'm leading coming into early voting, and both times they hit me with these attack pieces on telemarketing fraud. I could have walked away and said, you know what, I'm not going to, my wife doesn't want to hear this isn't good, and I could have quit. But I wasn't raised that way. I was raised that when you're right and you're unfairly attacked, you fight back and you go after them. I took that case to court. It went to court in July, and during the discovery process of it, we discovered that Harry Reid's op researcher, a guy named Cooper out of Reno, created this op research that was used against me, Harry Reid's. And the only witness at the trial, the guy that was against me, was Harry Reid's son, Leaf. So everything I was warned 6 years ago came to fruition when we found out what happened in those races. I won the only defamation lawsuit in the state of Nevada by a public official, from what I've been told at least. No other person in public office has ever won a defamation lawsuit. I won a unanimous verdict in July, which puts to rest, or at least makes it impossible for this guy to claim there's any truth to it when I run against Reid in a general election. What's he going to say? That I was involved in terrible marketing fraud, even though his own son was a witness against me, and the jurors found out that it declared I was innocent. They can't. I have an advantage that no other candidate does. Reid's already came after me with his op research, and I beat him in the courts. And I also showed the tenacity to keep the fight up, and I will do so in the general election. Yes.
I understand that his son is going to run for senator also?
No, his other son, oh my goodness, his other son, Roy Reid, that's another one, he's going to run for governor. And there is no opposition against him, and there's no opposition against Harry. So in the general election, there will be 2 Reids on the ballots.
That's scary.
Well, you know what was amazing is how they got to this point, because obviously having the appearance, and actually would be the reality of a dynasty in office, a royalty sort of say in office, is clearly hard for people to swallow. Why do they think they could pull this off? Well, think back when they first decided to do this. This was a year ago, right after the elections, when it looked like the Democrats were going to sweep through office and be there for 2 decades. And they had this type of a mentality that they could pull it off. And now you're looking around and you see that neither one of them have much of a chance of winning right now. Now, believe me, things change. I've been in sports long enough to know that at any moment this whole thing can change and he can build his way back up. I'm not going to let up on him. But right now we have him in a good position. We've got to keep working at it and keep exposing his failures and what I would do to resolve them. Let me talk about the healthcare issue for a second, if you don't mind, because that's one that has been very prevalent in discussions. And it's one that clearly shows the difference in his philosophy and my philosophy. Harry Reid's philosophy is we have a problem with our healthcare system. Costs are skyrocketing. People have pre-existing conditions that can't get covered. He claims that there's 30 million people that don't have insurance, which there may be, but there's only about there's been a number between 7 and 9 million of them actually want insurance. There's a number of people that are younger that don't want to pay for it, and there are a number of illegal immigrants that aren't entitled to insurance. That drops that number down to more like 9 million. So what is Reid's answer to all this? Reid's answer, before I get started on that, if Reid's bill was so great, why doesn't he do it and negotiate it and bring it in front of the public on C-SPAN so people could see how it's being negotiated? If it's so good, why isn't he doing that? If it's so good, why does he have to bribe one senator after another senator just to get to the number of votes he was hoping to have? Fortunately, he's below 6 again, so who knows who's going to bribe next? His bill would basically do this. It would cost anywhere between the Democrats' estimate of 800-some billion to the Republican estimate of $2.4 trillion in cost over the next 10 years, added on to a deficit we already have of $14 trillion. It would create upwards of 70 new government agencies, advisory boards that would get involved in your healthcare decisions and tell you what's best in your healthcare decisions. It would create a tax of over $400-some billion on people, and it would take $500 billion out of Medicare. And what's it going to solve? it's gonna maybe insure 9 million people a year that doesn't have it. You realize if it's the $1 trillion, let's just use $1 trillion. $1 trillion for 9 million people, you can pay $11,000 a year a month for $11,000 a year for insurance for those 9 million people. They can have insurance, and you don't have to have all those government agencies. You don't have to. But I mean, if that's the purpose of just insure these people, then just pay for it that way. It would be a lot cheaper. It wouldn't cost $11,000 a person to do it. I don't know if they've lost my math on that, but $11,000 for 9 million people for 10 years is the $1 trillion. I mean, the simple solution, again, my philosophy, my belief, is you go back to the private sector, allow the private sector to get us out of this problem by doing 4 simple things. We can reduce our healthcare costs by more than 50%. The first thing is you allow people to purchase insurance across state lines to create more competition. When you do that, you create more competition, and we have seen it through the history of our country that the more competition you create, the better product you have at a lower cost. And don't get us wrong. We have had the greatest economic success of any nation in the history of mankind based upon this free market society. Isn't it amazing? Well, I'm sidetracking. Second thing, tort reform. That's been well talked about too. You cap non-economic damages. You allow doctors will then not do the preventive medicine that they are currently doing. This is medicine that they're doing to prevent a lawsuit, not medicine that they feel a patient needs. It's been estimated that doctors are performing $180 to $210 billion a year in defensive medicine. Is that amazing? The amount of waste in there? Cap non-economic damages. The third thing is this. We have Medicare by federal laws to be the payee of last resort. That means any private insurance is supposed to pay the insurance first. Whatever's left over, Medicare pays. Our government doesn't do that. Medicare will not go after these private companies if there's a dispute and make them pay it. It's easier for them just to pay with our taxpayer dollars. It's a waste of our money. And I'll tell you this, in 2007, it was estimated that $1.1 trillion was spent on government health care, and of that, 10% was fraud, waste, and abuse. $100 billion, part of this is the Medicare. The fourth thing, and I'll answer your question in 1 second, the fourth thing is, if we would just eliminate or substantially reduce the state mandates that apply to our health care policies, we would save ourselves so much money. A state mandate is this. The state government says anybody who buys insurance in your state has to have this coverage whether you want it or not, and you're going to have to pay for it whether you want it or not. That's contrary to everything our country is based upon. Our country is based upon the fact you go out, you work hard, you have hard-earned dollars, and then you get to pick and choose what product you want to buy based upon the cost and the benefit. A state mandate in insurance policies is a mandate that you got to pay for this whether you want it or not. What do you think the state mandates in insurance policies are in our country? Just give me, what percentage of your insurance premiums? Anybody? 20 to 50% of your insurance premiums are state mandates. Nevada has one of the highest state mandates in the whole nation, so we're closer to 50%. So if you're paying $100 a month in health insurance, $50, that's going to state mandate. If you're paying $1,000, $500 to state mandates. Things in your insurance policy you haven't asked for. If you would do those 4 things, you would drop your health insurance premiums by more than 50%, and you don't have any government involvement. It doesn't cost the taxpayer $1, and it's market driven. And then the issue with respect to pre-existing conditions, we can solve a lot of those problems by just getting away from the employer-based insurance plan to an individual-owned plan. And what I mean by that is allow employers to put more money into what they call medical health savings account that the individual employee would own, where that employee can then go out and pick and choose what insurance he or she wants, and they can take that insurance with them from job to job, or if they get laid off. Or you allow an individual who's self-employed, or even someone who's unemployed who wants to buy the insurance, to buy the insurance themselves. Why don't more people buy the insurance individually? Because they don't get a tax break when they buy it, but an employer gets a tax break when he buys it for his employee. Why would you give a tax break to an employer to buy an employee insurance, but someone who's self-employed who wants to buy insurance for themselves doesn't get the same tax break? And have you heard in all this discussion that I brought up? They've never brought that issue up. And it's such a common sense proposal. It doesn't cost the taxpayer one additional dollar. What that does to you is basically when people leave their jobs, whether voluntary or involuntary, they keep the insurance with them. And then they're not going to get dropped with these pre-existing conditions now. So it would solve that problem. There's some common sense solutions to the health care problems that doesn't involve more government spending, more government intervention, and more government decisions in our lives. And we need to go in that direction. Any other questions? Yes?
I object to non-tax dollars going to pay abortions. How do you feel about it?
I agree 1,000%. And you know, the new health plan would allow for that. I don't believe it's allowed yet. Fortunately, we're not going to have the 60 numbers to get that passed. But I would agree with you 100%. I'm sorry. She asked if she did not want her taxpayer dollars to go to abortions, and did I agree with that? And I said yes. Yes. Yeah, that's the current law right now, which it's really interesting. The difference between Obama and Clinton so far has been this. When Clinton saw that his radical policies weren't going to work, he abandoned them and started passing some of these things that the Republicans were proposing. One of them was the welfare reform, which limits how long someone can be on welfare. Obama's policies are failing, and people want him to go away from it, but he just is holding steadfast and going to keep pursuing them with his eyes closed. But yes, I certainly do agree with that. Do you have a question or somebody else back here? Yeah, yes, I'm sorry. Perhaps you.
What's your plan or something, how to create jobs?
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to release in about 10 days our economic plan. We'll discuss it more in depth. But there's a number of things that we need to do. One is we need to diversify our economy more away from just the gaming and mining and the construction industry. I have some really unique ideas that we can help do this, and it won't cost us any money. It won't cost the federal government any money. Part of it is to release some of the federal land that the BLM owns right now and put it back into the private sector so we could entice companies to come in here and move here. Currently, the federal government owns upwards to the high 80% of the land here in Nevada. Release that land. Let the people of Nevada own it and use it to create economic activity. A second area is I don't want to get too much in depth and take away everything that I'm going to lay out with some media here, but you know, there's a way we can stimulate the economy based upon encouraging more consumption, by enticing more consumption of products by lowering certain prices and taxes, and we're going to come out with our way to do that. By lowering those prices for people to consume products, you encourage more purchasing, which is going to then require more people to be hired to produce the products, so you're going to have a real creation of jobs, not an artificial creation of government jobs, which Obama's currently doing. And the third area is, I think, of an interest here, and I mentioned this when I was here before, is I believe we've got to utilize Yucca Mountain. Right now, we spent tens of billions of dollars on Yucca Mountain, and Harry Reid claimed that's the greatest thing he's done for the state of Nevada. I believe we should turn Yucca Mountain into a nuclear reprocessing facility where we process nuclear spent fuel. They do it in many countries, including France, where they reprocess 95% of nuclear spent fuel. What that would do is it would create thousands of jobs here in Nevada, hundreds of millions of dollars in much needed revenue, and turn UNLV and UNR into the leading research institutions in the whole world. Yes, just 1 second.
We can't hear.
I have one fear of Harry losing. And on his way out, he's going to steal the rest of Nevada. He was here, what, a year ago, and he tried to snatch a great big piece for Mineral County. Is there any way that we can roadblock that? Because I know he's going, and when he goes, he's going to try to take the rest of the state.
Well, we better hope that we keep him away from the 60-proof majority that he had before, and block off some of whatever these things he may want to do that you referred to. There's not much I can do until I get into office. I need you to help me get into office first, and then I can make some changes. Yeah. There's a lot of things I want. Yeah. Just 1 second.
As a legal immigrant to this country, I'm appalled at what illegal immigrants receive. And I want to know your feelings and what you're going to do to change that.
Well, we need to, first of all and foremost, I mean, everybody talks, but we need to protect our borders. We need to stop illegal immigrants from coming in as best as we can. But there's always ways around that, and that's the standard line you're going to get. What we really need to do is enforce the laws that we have on the books that say that illegal immigrants are not entitled to free health care or taxpayer health care. Illegal immigrants are not entitled to taxpayer education, and illegal immigrants are not able, should not be able, and it's illegal to work for an employer here. And we need to go after those employers more and take away the incentive they have to hire illegal immigrants. If we do those three things, you're going to decrease this problem substantially. We won't have the problem. I don't believe, I know the other standard line a lot of Republicans like to say is, hey, let's get all the police and round up the illegal immigrants and send them back. I mean, that's a great line, but it's not realistic. What's realistic is enforce these laws. I mean, how do we ever get to how could there ever be a law where we say this is a safe city? A safe city means, hey, if you're illegal, you come in here, we can't ask you about it.
Right.
I mean, if you're illegally in our country, you can't be in our country. Just enforce those laws, and that would resolve that.
This is a sort of personal question, but we have two senators now that, in my opinion, sold their souls to the devil. And what makes us believe, what will make us believe that you won't do that?
You know what's funny is that question is, I've been asked that, maybe not in such harsh words, but I've been asked that probably more than anything else. I was just asked that recently. You know, this is the thing. People go into office for different purposes, and they go in there with different intents. And you need to go out and look at who's running, and you need to make a decision for yourself. Is this person going back to Washington, D.C. with the right purpose and the right intent? I'm going to tell you why I'm running and what motivates me. I grew up during those great Senator Laxalt years, and Governor Duke was in California, Senator Laxalt here in Nevada. And I saw the wonderful things Senator Laxalt was able to do in that position. And I have so much respect for those things that he did. And my mother's been in public service now 24 years. And I look at all the great things she's able to accomplish in public service. And I said, isn't that a great way to spend your life? To work on projects that you can better your country, better your state, and leave that type of a satisfaction in your heart that you made those accomplishments. My mother, who was on the city council in Las Vegas, when she first got elected, there was a largest booster at UNLV who was the biggest supporter of my dad. And he had he's a developer, and he had an issue with the Social Security Department building there. And they wanted my mother to vote some way. And although he was the closest friend to our family, she didn't feel it was right, and she went buck her principles. She went buck her principles and voted against it. I have a lot of respect for what she did. I have a lot of respect for what Senator Laxalt did. And I want to emulate myself like what they did. So when my kids who are back there get to be my age, they'll be able to have the same appreciation for me that I have for my mother and Senator Laxalt. And I can tell you that, and anybody else can tell you that, but who really means it? Yes.
Sir, I'm a school teacher out at the high school, and the question I've got pertains to education. And as a teacher in a small town, especially with the Perkins money, federal grant money that we get, is divided equally between small schools and large schools, based on student population, etc. I don't see the fairness in it, because with a small school, on the front end, you get all the money would be equal as far as student, how many students you have, you get the same amount of money per student capital, etc. The downside is if I was in a larger city, I could go out, because I teach a carpentry class, I could go out to the local industry and say, hey, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? In this town, in this county, I can't do that. And so I would like to advocate or ask for your help to, with that, to keep in mind, the rural counties and school districts within the state to say, hey, these small schools and these small school districts, need additional funding, to provide for the students that otherwise their economic base, from the businesses that support the schools that aren't there. And just your thoughts on that issue.
We certainly have a lot of problems with our education system, and there are some things that the federal government can do, but it's in my opinion, should be very limited. it should be the state or government, our state government and our local rules should be the ones that are working with this funding and involved in education. The federal government has a very limited role in the education process, in my view.
I'm talking specifically the Perkins grant money.
Yeah.
That comes from the federal government. So there's some, when you come at your level, it would be specifically that.
Sure, there are some laws that have been passed, and there's no child left behind and other laws where the federal government has gotten involved in that area. And what the point I was making is I think those have to be limited and allow the states to have control over the school districts. I don't know enough about the Perkins law to be able to give you an informed decision on it, but I will tell you I'll look into it. And I would like to spend some more time with you and get a better understanding of that specific law, and I can give you a better answer then.
Thank you, sir.
And just an observation, I don't know how many we have running for this seat against Harry Reid. It's a little wearying to have so many people running against Harry Reid. I think the winner of this contest is going to be the one who runs for that seat on his own merit. I'd like to hear more about individual merit.
I hope what I've been talking about now for the past hour is about individual merit. If you want an elected official that has elected experience, or someone who's been tied to a specific party who has more control over the political landscape, I'm not your candidate. If you want somebody that is going to fight for the interests of the people, that has the convictions that I'm trying to express to you today with the issues that I believe firmly in, and will do everything I can to accomplish those, then I am the right person. Every question that we talk about here is what I believe in and what I will do and try to fight for. I think more important in what you're talking about, who has the best experience and qualifications or background, whatever you're talking about, you need the person who's going to go back and represent you the best. And there's a number of things. What is that person's viewpoint? Political philosophy in all these different areas, healthcare, jobs, what ideas does he or she have that will help better our state? Does that person have the conviction and the determination and the wherewithal to get it accomplished when they go back to Washington, D.C., and is that person trustworthy? Now, that is why I'm out here traveling the state, to meet with you, to give you my political philosophy, to tell you my background and let you know what I believe in. And hopefully, you'll be giving you a chance to see me individually. You'll understand. You can make an opinion whether you really believe I'm truthful or not. So that's what I'm doing, is traveling to the state to do that. I will tell you that in this race, I will not make a personal attack on any of my opponents. It would be counterproductive to do that in the primary. But I will distinguish my political beliefs from my opponent's political beliefs. And if you don't, there's no sense in running. I mean, you have to say, this is what I believe in, and you're going to get from me. And if you don't, this is what, and this is what my opponent said they believe in. And that's what you're going to get from me in this campaign.
If you should win the primary and be the major one going in November against Harry, we all know there's a learning curve coming in, and having never done Senate work before, will you hit the ground running? Will you get some background from as many people as possible as to what you're going to be up against when you get back there so that you hit the ground running?
To answer your question, I certainly would, and again, my background will show you. I believe has exhibited the fact that you'll see how hard I work at anything I get involved in. Even things that I haven't been successful in. Cindy will tell you, when I campaigned 3 years ago for the Secretary of State's race, I traveled all around the state, more than any candidate out there, working my tail off so that I could learn the issues, meet the people, and understand what I would do when I got in office. I'm going to do the same thing during this campaign. If I'm fortunate to be elected in November, I will work my tail off to understand what needs to be done to do the best job I can do the first time in office.
What are your views on energy self-sufficiency?
And that's also a great question, because it deals so much with our national defense and the ability of our country to survive through these tough times. I believe, this is my philosophy with energy. We should use the energy available to our country, that's available right now, and use it right now. That means drilling Myanmar, going offshore and drilling there, utilizing all of our resources. And at the same time we're doing that, we need to invest in this alternative sources of energy where we get our technology and improves those alternative sources, so that when we run out of energy, or we can make those alternative sources cheap enough, we can move in that direction. It's foolish to put the horse before the cart. Is that right? No, the cart before the horse. Yes. That'll be on Harry's. It's foolish to do that. You know, right now we're saying, hey, we're gonna not use our resources available to us now, but we're going to start moving towards alternative energy, and it's not there right now to be able to provide it for us at a cost-effective number. Hey, we are in a world economic battle right now, in a world economic crisis. The last thing we can do is run up the costs of our businesses with the higher energy costs. I think they can compete in this market. And that along with the Yucca Mountain, where you can reprocess 95% of nuclear spent fuel, would create more energy. So that would be my energy policy.
Thank you.
We're not taxing imports. They're sending our jobs overseas.
You know, I just don't have an opinion on that right now. At first blush, there are tariffs and taxes that come in for imports and exports that are imports in other countries too, which are our exports. And you get into trade wars with that. I know that anytime we've done that with, excuse me, some products from China or Russia, they threaten to do the same to us. Before I can give you a full answer on that, I'd rather research that issue better. But I would have some hesitation thinking that's going to be the solution to it.
I was going to ask basically the same question, only specifically about China. How are you going to fight them taking over our country?
The biggest risk to China, and it's a risk to our national defense, is they control so much of our national debt. I mean, if you want to be scared, God, the one country out there that is the most dangerous to us controls our money, our debt. And if they want to flood that market with U.S. dollars, what's going to happen to our economy? The easiest way to get out of that is we got to reduce this incredibly ridiculous deficit. And did anybody hear any of those solutions last night on the State of the Union address? What did you hear? They're going to freeze the budget for a small percentage of our budget, of our expenditures. They're going to freeze it. Nothing about reducing the deficit. They just raised our debt ceiling $1.9 trillion more today. They just raised it today without blinking. I don't see how they say we can save $500 billion for that if they froze it. We're not cutting it. What do we do? We're not going to pay more than we're going to pay in the future?
All of our companies out here, they're accountants.
Yes. Just 1 second.
Thank you. I have a question on the gas and oil, because in the I received an email that had all the different powers in the gas and oil field, and the importing of gas from other countries, and not pumping anything from within the United States. The highest was Standard, the next was ExxonMobil, the next was Texaco, and it went on down to, we have one gas company or oil company in the United States that pumps in the United States, which is in Arkansas. What can be done, if anything, about their bringing in and making us more vulnerable to okay, then I'll leave it right there.
I think what you're saying is, what can we do better to have our companies within the United States produce more gas and oil from the United States as opposed to bringing in from outside from other countries. And that's where we draw up ANWR in Alaska. That's been debated. You allow us to go in there and do that, which the Alaskans want us to do. You allow us to go and drill offshore where the states allow you to do it. And you utilize the resources we have now. In fact, there's a gentleman I met just recently who has a huge natural gas facility in Wyoming. He's saying all the problems they're having in being able to get that product out of the ground because of the bureaucracy and the regulations they have, and that That's part of what I first started talking about, is we keep tying our hands of our companies here in the United States with these type of regulations, and they can't compete internationally. So they go and buy it outside the country to bring it in, and we're beholden to all those other countries, and they have so much control over our foreign policy and our national security, let alone our deficit. I'll stay over here for a second. I got 2 questions in a row.
Part of the problem with legislation is that you have intent and then the agencies just go ahead and do what they want. Department of Interior, BLM, all of those agencies that have our economy completely bound in Nevada, but all over the West. Is there anything that you can do as a senator to make sure that they follow through with your intent? Because a lot of times good legislation happens and then the agencies take it wherever they damn well please.
I think one answer to that would be if we just made the bills easier to understand and more clearer. We don't need 2,000 pages to tell us about our health care. Make the bills clear and understandable so that these agencies have to follow them.
I came in a few minutes late, so forgive me if this has been brought up, but how do you feel about Yucca Mountain and the current situation that we're in there?
I'll explain that with you right after this meeting personally. I discussed it, I think, with everybody already. I'm in favor of turning Yucca Mountain into a nuclear reprocessing facility, especially for fuel. This is great. I don't have to work out tonight.
You mentioned earlier about upholding the Constitution. What is your views on the Second Amendment as it is written?
I appreciate that because that's a good question that's come up in my race. I am fully and totally supportive of the Second Amendment and have been my whole life. I am a lifetime member of the NRA. Now, there's been some issues raised in my campaign because in my last race, there was a volunteer for me that is now a paid consultant for Sue Loudon, who went off on his own and contacted the Brady organization and asked them to do a robocall on my behalf. I didn't know about it. I didn't even know the guy did it until he acknowledged it to me this past December. He has come on the record and has told the Washington Times that he did this on his own. Well, he did this without my knowledge and consent. He says my mother was involved in it, or my mother denies it. But I have no involvement in that, so if you hear any of these rumors to that extent, that is all coming from Sue Loudon's camp, and her paid consultant has already been on the record to say he did it without my knowledge or consent. Oh, do we have, is that my position already back there? Okay. We have an article back there, because this is an issue. What's happened in this campaign is Sue Loudon's camp has been sending out email blasts with this Brady call on it, which is really ironic because I never even heard the call or even saw or know of any kind of a transcript of it. And all of a sudden, 3 years later, it's disappeared. I wonder how. But anyways, they're sending this out to people through email blasts. What we've done in our campaign is brought my positions on the NRA. They're right there. We post them on the website, but they're here on the hard copy for you to take with you if you have any questions.
I just have another question on the cost of the Second Amendment. Hillary Clinton and our ambassador to the UN are working again for a global treaty to take our guns away from us. It would have to be ratified by the Senate to sign it. Would you support or not?
Of course I would support it. Furthermore, I don't think it would be legal. I think that would be completely unconstitutional, and the fact that we have a constitutional protection in the Second Amendment, and you can't take that constitutional right away from you by a treaty with another country. I'm sure that's going to be challenged. The NRA and the other organizations that support gun rights will fight it. I will fight it as your next U.S. Senator.
Generally speaking, what is your opinion of the UN, the way it was intended to work and the way it's working today?
I would believe that the intent of the UN originally was to get countries together and try to work their differences out amicably, open, with open discussion with one another. And now there's a lot of concerns, and I certainly share those, that we are giving away our sovereign rights to the UN and dictating, and allow the UN to dictate things that should only be dictated by us as a sovereign country.
Take away their money?
The UN's money? I would certainly listen and yeah. Well, again, that is something that has come up. People have suggested this. I'm not going to take a position until I know more about the ramifications that would happen if we did, and if there were other alternatives to being a member in good standing where we're not giving away our rights, which is what the intent, I believe.
We give our rights away because we participate.
Well, okay. We don't have to, and the UN rules don't provide for that. We're allowing them, to our consent, to take those rights away.
I'm sorry.
You told me you were going to be a pain in my butt from the time I met you.
I did tell him that. What is your, how do I put it? What is your stand on Israel?
Israel's been a strong ally of ours and have been supportive of us, and we need to support Israel. I don't see how you can have any other answer to that. You ran where? Iran is obviously a very dangerous situation for us right now, and the threat of nuclear weapons is probably the most dangerous aspect that we are facing right now here in the United States and around the world. We cannot allow Iran to get a nuclear weapon under any circumstances, and we need to do what it takes to make sure they don't.
This is about something that President Obama mentioned last night. I wasn't really sure because he talked so fast around it. I wasn't really sure what he meant. Maybe you can explain it, because Harry Reid follows everything that President Obama does, or actually President Obama, I guess, does everything Harry Reid wants. I don't know, but anyway, he mentioned something about the Supreme Court justices just voted down a law or a bill or something that prevented foreign countries from coming in and spending money in our presidential elections, or whatever, payoffs or whatever, how you want to put it. Can you explain what that's about? Because it does tie in Harry Reid with that.
Sure. I'm not sure if Harry Reid can follow everything Obama says, because he was taking a little bit of a nap at that time. What it is, there was a landmark decision by the U.S. Supreme Court dealing with campaign finance. It struck down a portion of the Feingold-McCain law, but it had nothing to do with foreign corporations, it's any corporations. Corporations in our country right now, according to the McCain finance, the McCain-Feingold campaign finance laws, said that corporations could not, they were limited by the amount of money they could put into the race, and they could not run ads the last 30 days before the election on behalf of one candidate or not. They struck that law down, and now corporations can do that. Obama claimed that's going to be the downfall of our elections, and I guess he feels it's okay for unions to be able to do everything they want in an election, but he's going to anti-corporations. It's really domestic corporations. Foreign corporations can't even contribute in our election laws, federal election laws.
Speaking in that area, because something else that was brought up was lobbyists cannot be on some kind of our boards or meetings.
I'm as confused with that as you are, and what I think you're referring to is confusing, because you keep hearing the rhetoric that Obama says he's not going to have any of his lobbyists in his camp, on his staff, and all of a sudden he gets elected and they're all over the place. There's no law on it. It's just something Obama had claimed he would do when he got in office, and he's not doing it.
Okay, my next question has to do with national security. Do you believe that our government is providing enough national security against terrorists? And what are your opinions on profiling?
I believe our government should be given the tools to do everything it has to do to keep us free from another terrorist act. And that's enhanced interrogation and profiling.
What is your view on treating these terrorists with kid gloves? I don't get that.
The only gloves that I want those terrorists to have are Jack Bauer's. Okay. You gotta be a 24 fan to get that one, okay? No, I don't. The terrorists should be tried as war criminals. We're in a war with the terrorists through military tribunals. They do have no right to our civil court system. They have no right to free defense with our taxpayer dollars. I'm 1,000% against what Obama's doing, and we need to stop it immediately. My wife and I are big 24 fans, so I threw that out there. Any other questions? Well, what I want to, okay, good.
There's still a big movement on wilderness land takeover, and when those thugs came in from Harry Reid and tried to snow Mineral County, what's your opinion on that? Because fistfights have happened before in Vegas over this.
And I was asked that question earlier by my interrogator. And I think we got to go in the opposite direction. We need to be releasing the land from the federal government. The federal government has to release our state land, and they can't be taking it back. And they can't be putting restrictions on the land that people here in our state, the people who rightfully should have the use of that land, they can't be putting restrictions on them for being able to do what they want to do with that land, which we went through a number of things that are being prevented now. So I would be against that. Well, listen,
real quick, but I don't trust anybody east of Looney. So how are you going to prove to me that you are really from Nevada? I mean, no, well, it's east and south. It's like eastern Nevada, they got bad gun law attitudes, they got all kinds of things. I'm just kind of not in that camp, and I'm not sure. You know, you seem like a good guy I've talked to before, I listened to before, but a lot of the stuff that I see going on in Vegas, I don't like.
There's a lot of things going on in Las Vegas, in our political system, with our politicians that I don't like, and the public in general doesn't like, and it's created a perception that there are no good public servants. And let me give you, there's a distinction. There's a distinction between a politician, and Harry Reid's a politician, compared to a public servant. And a public servant is someone who's going to really serve the public. How do you pick and choose who's going to be a public servant for you and actually do what's serve the public, as opposed to somebody just giving their rhetoric? I can't give you that answer, because you're going to come, every candidate's going to come up here and they're going to try to tell you what you want to hear, or try to, the only thing I can tell you is come and listen to them, see what they say, he or she says, make a judgment whether you believe they're speaking with conviction and honesty, and then you got to live by that decision. That's what our democratic society is. You're going to vote for somebody, but the hardest thing is if you don't get to hear from the person, you don't get to see them, you don't get to ask them questions, and then you got to sit there and try to make a decision. That's why I'm traveling around the state, and I did so 3 years ago, as much as I can, so I could meet with people here and give them an understanding of what I stand for, what I believe in, and give you a chance to determine whether you really believe what I'm saying. And that's all I can tell you.
That's Cindy's automatic shut off, by the way.
I think this microphone was only rented for 2 hours.
Rented for
2 hours. What I really want to...
I have a question
Yes.
for your wife.
Yes. Amy!
What? Sorry. Hi, Amy. I have a question for you.
Oh, okay.
If he gets elected, will you still shop in the same stores for his clothes and stuff, or is he going to wear $1,600 shoes and $1,300 suits?
Oh, he doesn't even wear that. We get everything on sale. I don't even get to wear that.
one statement to make. I've been a teacher aide for 23 years, many years ago, so I'm loud, so you'll hear me without that. Thank you for coming here. You reaffirmed my belief in our country. Because in this area or any area, why are Democrats so blind that they can't see what they don't believe in? They're trying to do away with talk radio and TV, and that's our American right, but they want to do away with them, and they don't feel the same way. We had a Tea Party bus come through. God bless America. They stood and we sang the national anthem and American flags all over the place. Pelosi said we were enemies of the state. Well, she called us Nazis because one lady carried a Nazi swastika sign with a big line going through it, which means we don't want a Nazi, government. And she called us Nazis. But why do Republicans are such a breath of air that we all believe the same thing, that we want to live in our America like we used to be? And why are the Democrats, they turn their heads towards all that thing? They're blind to it. They're blind to all that. They don't watch out. Well, that's what I should have said. Conservative or I'm sorry, because there's a lot of good Democrats and there's a lot of Republicans, or I guess there are.
And we as Republicans that were in office in the early 2000s, we let down our base by losing those conservative values. And that's why we voted out of office. Fortunately, we have a second chance. And if we vote a second chance,
Ladies and gentlemen, how can our president even say things like that, to bring down all the kids?
First of all, that was one of the nicest comments. I really appreciate that. I want to say this because this is, to me, this is important. Very telling. Last night on the Glenn Beck show, they did a little snippet, and they talked about these radical conservatives that have these crazy statements, and all of these calm, reassuring liberals. And what they believe in. It was the darndest thing I'd ever seen, because I hadn't seen some of those quotes. Fortunately, I was, they put my quote up there along with some other conservatives. And they talked about the basic things we talked about, upholding the Constitution, limiting our spending. But then they listed the quotes from some of these other people. And I am just aghast by some of the things that were said. I hadn't even heard in the public that the liberal media just doesn't print. That it was so offensive that if they were said by anybody else, there would be a stampede to run people out of office. If you get a chance, I have it posted on my website. Please go and you can check out that little snippet that Glenn Beck had. It was really enlightening. Yes.
My question is, do you feel that you have good old-fashioned common sense?
Absolutely.
I got a question. You can release your birth certificate.
Am I going to release my birth certificate?
I think the fact that Senator Reid thinks he has to have a camera following you and around the state, recording every word you say so they can use a 15-second soundbite, says more about his character than I wanted to know.
Exactly. Last year.
Well, listen, I want to thank Cindy and her husband. Is Mark here yet? Did he come? Yeah. Did Mark come? Okay. Well, I come up here many times. The first time I saw you, was that for the first time I met you? Was it at the Walker Lake for the firemen's breakfast? Right?
Actually, it was before that. Patty brought you up.
That's right. You were at the home first.
We had about 8 people there.
Yes.
The wagon kids weren't with you, and it was like your first speaking engagement.
Yes.
And
come a long way.
Yeah.
I was very
absolutely.
Happy. But what I wanted to say was I've established a very nice relationship with the Nixon family. They're really great people. Every time I come up with you, we get a better crowd to come up. I know a lot of it is the interest in this race, but I do appreciate everything Cindy and her husband have done. I appreciate the fact you've come out and meet with me and discuss this race on your Thursday night and take time out of your schedule. I'm going to ask one last thing, if you don't mind. If you if you will support me and give me an opportunity to be your representative in the general election, please go out and talk to your friends, talk to your family. This is a grassroots effort. If you go out and just say, listen, look at this guy, Danny Tarkanian, I like what he stands for, and if you do too, go out and vote for him, it'll make up the difference that my opponents have in money and what I will have with grassroots. So I ask you for your help with this bill. It doesn't cost you any money. I'm not asking you for money. I just want you to put out a good word if you really believe and want to support me. Again, I want to thank you very much. My wife and I and kids, we really appreciate your hospitality.
I have one more question. When are you going to come back?
Well,
I think we'll be back for like cake dinners, and then we have 2 more tours planned for the primary election. So we'll be back for it. We'll also be most likely for the Armed Forces Day Parade.
For all of you that have not signed or signed these sheets for young ladies, please do, because then we can send you information on our campaign. Again, we really need to work with the grassroots people in the place. Even if they're not sold yet, at least let us send information on the campaign if you have any more answers for them. Thank you again.
Also, just one quick reminder, you guys. If anybody here liked what Danny said and wanted to vote for him, I know he said our primary election was the hardest election. And in the state of Nevada, you can only vote in the Republican primary, which means you can only vote for Danny if you're registered as a Republican. Spread the word. We have voter registration sheets here. If you're a Democrat, an independent, undecided, we'll sign you up. Sorry about that, sir. Just see Pete start running people over.
Because I don't know anybody.